Okay. We're so glad to have you. We're so glad to be hosting you today. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're just joining us, please drop a chat, send a message, just tell us your first name. And the idea of that is for networking. And what city are you joining from? But more importantly, how are you feeling today? Before some of you joined, Tammy and I was sharing how we're feeling. And I think it's warm here. You appreciate it when it's warm, and you appreciate knowing fully well that in days to come it's going to be different. But we're excited to have you, and you're going to know a bit more about us in a few minutes. We're excited to host you in this particular session. Yeah, people are dropping a message. Okay, Lindsay. Happy and excited to be here. Lindsay, thank you. You live in Lethbridge. It's good to have you. For me joining from Vancouver, my favorite Vancouver. I used to live in Vancouver, so I love Vancouver. Feeling excited and you get to learn new things. Yes, great. And we have Victor from Lagos, Nigeria. That's amazing. We have Tolu Abid. My name is Tolu. Hey, Tolu, our wonderful friend. Tolu from Calgary. Exciting. Tolu says, I'm super excited to be here. It is great to have everyone here. We're still admitting people. And if you still want to drop, let us know where you're joining from. If you want to show your face, yes, I can see Okwemikpo. I can't see everybody on the screen. So Tammy and I, from time to time, will acknowledge those that we're saying. I can see Okwemikpo on the screen. Okwemikpo, it's good to have you. Sana, thank you for showing up. I can't see you. Tammy, who are you seeing again on the screen? You're mute. Okay.
I see
You
like
can
five
see.
people, yeah, but not too many faces. I want to see faces, everyone. So I'm gonna keep clicking through and seeing who I can see. But those who have their camera on, thank you. You look lovely.
Yes. Thank you so much. Those of you having your camera on, we appreciate you. Okwemikpo, I know you're from Toronto. Thank you for joining. Tammy loves faces. Yes, Tammy loves faces.
It's true.
I like that. Tammy loves faces. Okay. All right.
That's so true.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Sana.
We'll take a few
Hi,
more.
Tammy.
So we'll take a few more. We have Joy from Calgary. Sorry, you're just having lunch. You can't show your face. That's totally all right, Joy. The only thing is that you're telling us about your lunch. You are not sharing with us. But we will not take offense. That's okay. Excited to have you. Okay, so I think we'll get into it. We are into it already. It is amazing to have everybody. And you know why we're here today, right? The idea for Timmy and I to put this together is to talk about how do you turn everyday managers into culture builders and performance multipliers, right? So the theme for this particular webinar is transform managers into leaders. That's the whole idea of the conversation, and we're going to be doing it together. It's not just going to be Tammy and I. It's going to be a fun time together with yourself. So be ready. So let's start by looking at it this way. Who is this webinar for? And we curated it specifically for some specific set of people. The first is entrepreneurs, right? If you're building teams and you want to scale fast, you want to go beyond yourself, then you're in the right place. And you may be an employee right now, you have plans to start your own business. Believe you me, you're in the right place. This is for you. The second set of people this webinar is for is HR leaders. I'm passionate about HR. I'm passionate about HR leaders because HR leaders shapes the systems and the systems shapes the outcome. So if you're an HR leader and you're shaping systems that drive retention, this session is for you. And if you're a manager, you are the core of this, right? You're ready to grow from task supervision to being a people leader. This is absolutely for you, right? Because we're going to be navigating and exploring the dynamics of leading and managing people. And if you're an executive, right, you're seeking culture that both retains talent and delivers results. One of the things I've seen over and over in my practice, and Tammy and I were sharing the same, we will be sharing it, is one of the biggest constraints and the headache of executives and is being able to attract and retain great talent. So if you are here this webinar is for you. And so it's great to have you. Now, but why does this matter? Somebody's asking, why does this matter? First and foremost, the research shows that 60% of new managers fail, and this failure happens in their first 2 years. And it's not because of lack of efforts, but lack of clarity and systems. They were promoted, they could do the job, but lack of clarity and systems is the core reasons for their failure. Then you have a 3x employee engagements when you have effective managers. Managers are the middle guys that transform the organization. They are the implementers. And so when you have solid managers who have effective systems, employee engagement skyrockets, and we know the impact of engaged employees. We all do. And then the research also shows that we have 4x retention impacts. So people are less likely to quit when they have solid managers. And so this session is not about blaming managers or anything. It's about helping you navigate that maze and putting systems and framework in place for you as you navigate that. All right. So I'm going to introduce somebody. I'm going to tell you about somebody on this particular webinar. She's an amazing person. I'm sure you're wondering who that person is, and that person is no other person but Tammy. Yay, Tammy Hoekstra. I hope I pronounced the word. I've been rehearsing it.
You did.
Okay, thank you. Tammy is an amazing person. Tammy believes that leadership isn't about titles. It's about influence, empathy, and connection. And this is why Tammy and I are friends, because that was the first thing that I experienced when I engaged her. And Tammy has tons of experience as a leadership coach. She's also a university instructor. She lectures in 2 wonderful universities here in Alberta. Tammy helps organizations grow stronger by focusing on what really matters, and that is people. You can do all you want to do in the market and build your business. Tammy helps you and has helped many organizations focus on people. Our interactive training sessions on emotional intelligence, communication, and workplace culture has helped countless leaders build trust, improve collaboration, and lead with confidence. That is Tammy's hallmark everywhere in Canada. You can go and ask, and I'll give you people to ask. Our goal is to help leaders create positive workplace cultures where people feel valued, engaged, and empowered. And the whole idea is to create environments where both people and performance thrive. And that is Tammy. People, please help me welcome and celebrate my wonderful friend and partner. Tammy, please, let's drop an icon, put our hands together, do some woohoo. Tammy, it's good it's so great to have you here. I feel very honored. She's one of, some of you people might not fully understand the context, but Tammy is she's an ally on many levels. She's a very intelligent, emotionally intelligent, well, that's her field. She's a very savvy, emotionally intelligent personality, very warm, lovely to be with. More importantly, very cerebral. And, both of us are doing this together. Tammy, thank you so much. Excited to learn from you. Lindsay said so. I'm re-echoing it. Okay, so Tammy.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Imole. So, you almost take my words away from me here. I really appreciate you all being here. And so my partner, who you've been hearing from, is Imole Ashogbon. He and I did pretty good on that. I practiced it yesterday. So, so Imole, as he said, we've become friends because we both believe in the same things, and we both really know the value of helping people, supporting people, because we want people to be happy and we want people to be successful and find meaning in what it is that they do. So Imole's mission is simple, right? He wants to help organizations succeed in the marketplace by turning their people strategy into their greatest advantage. He's got tons of experience with over 15 years as a strategic HR consultant and organizational psychologist. He has led transformations across Fortune 500 companies and SMEs. He works alongside business leaders to align people and strategy with growth, which develops systems, it develops culture, and develops leadership that drives measurable improvements in performance, retention, and in market impact. So we know that that's what people want, right? What is all this training? What is all this doing? We want impact, right? So his work spans organizational design, change management, workforce transformation, and he has a reputation for turning complex HR challenges into clear executable strategies. This is something that I've been able to see firsthand in the work that he does, that, things seem very, very complex, and he has a skill at being able to simplify it and kind of calming things down and saying, okay, here's where we're going to start in order to get to there. Imole also teaches HR at the University of Calgary here in Alberta, where he is shaping the next generation of HR professionals by blending this academic rigor with practical insights, right? He's not just teaching from a textbook. He has the knowledge and the experience to add to that. He's a trusted advisor to executives. He brings both global corporate expertise and entrepreneurial agility, and he's helping businesses build HR functions that are not just compliant, that's important, but that are also competitive. So please welcome my friend, my partner in this webinar and years to come, Imole.
Thank you. My head is swelling, literally. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. And thanks, everyone.
Excuse me. Okay, so again, thanks to everyone for being here. If you weren't here, Imole and I would just be talking to each other, which that's okay too, but we kind of like people. So thanks for signing up and for being here. So today's session, today's webinar is something that we know is top of mind for many organizations right now. And that is that they want leadership that not only manages the tasks, because the tasks are important, but they want them to actually inspire people. So we've all seen the challenges. Maybe you've been on one side of this or the other, but losing great employees, managers maybe who get results, but they don't always build trust. Or maybe there's teams where engagement is feeling inconsistent. I certainly know I've experienced that in my past. So the truth is that people don't just leave jobs, they leave managers. And they also leave workplace cultures where they feel disconnected, misunderstood, or undervalued. So the good news is it doesn't have to be that way, right? When leaders develop the right skills that connect, communicate, and hold themselves accountable, they not only keep great people, but they create cultures where people thrive. So you see on your screen right now the agenda. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with just probably a 10-ish minute high-level overview of the type of training that I do, that I perform for companies. So that is soft skills and emotional intelligence through a leadership lens. After that, Imole will share some insights from his HR systems perspective. And then we'll finish with a question and answer period. So please be thinking about your questions. You can pop them in the chat. You can write them down for yourself. And towards the end, we are going to be addressing those questions. Also at the very end, we will be providing you with a link that you can click on where you will have access to a free, powerful toolkit that you can start using right away. So here we go. So I alluded to earlier the familiar phrase, people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. Now I'm going to take that one step further, and I want to say that people, yes, they may quit managers, but what they're really quitting is cultures that don't feel healthy. Now, when I say culture, think about what comes to mind for you, right? Culture is not just something that it's intangible. It's not just something we post on the wall or our website. Culture is like how we feel, what is it that we do, not so much what we do here, but how we do it. How do you feel when you are going to work? Do you have a sense of dread and terror and gut rot? Or do you feel fulfilled, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about culture, and it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. So what makes the difference to culture? Well, it's leaders who understand that success is not just about technical skills or managing the to-do list. Yes, those things are important, But it's really about the ability to connect, to communicate, and to create an environment where people want to stay and they actually want to contribute, that they feel a sense of purpose out of contributing. And what about emotional intelligence? Well, at its core, emotional intelligence has 4 key parts, and these are what you see on your screen. So first we have self-awareness. So this is recognizing your own emotions, your own triggers, what drives you up mad, what really irks you about people or situations. So what are your triggers? What are your strengths? And what are your blind spots? So an example could be, let's say you know that you get really frustrated when somebody misses a deadline, right? Because it has a domino effect. Or maybe you feel a bit defensive when somebody is trying to give you feedback. Having the self-awareness that you know that these things trigger you maybe a little bit more than other situations, that self-awareness can help you pause before reacting, right? Reactions are not always helpful. Responses are, which brings us to self-management. So sure, we can have self-awareness, but self-awareness alone is not going to do much, right? Self-management has to do with controlling our impulses, managing our stress, and responding thoughtfully instead of letting our emotions control our reactions. I think we've all experienced it. Give us a thumbs up if you've experienced when you've maybe said something or done something or sent an email when you realize maybe that wasn't the best reaction that I had. Maybe I could have handled that a little bit differently. That's what self-management is all about. Social awareness, this is where empathy comes in. So this is understanding and feeling what other people are experiencing. So this has to do with reading social cues, right? What is written on people's faces? Tolu put in the chat earlier, Tammy loves faces. Yes, I do, because that's where the majority of communication comes from. And I'm not talking about the words that come out of your mouth. I'm talking about the nonverbal cues that your face is communicating with us. So an example of social awareness is noticing that a team member seems stressed and maybe asking how you can support them, or maybe recognizing when somebody feels left out of a discussion. You're the person that brings them in, right? That invites them in, includes people. Last here on this emotional intelligence board here is we have social skills, relationship management. This is using your understanding of yourself and others to build trust, to influence, and to navigate conflicts. Those of you who know me, who've taken training with me, who've ever talked to me, you know that I say this next phrase all the time. I say, relationships are the foundation of everything. If you have solid relationships, everything from that point on is smoother, right? Conflict or disagreement doesn't turn into a disaster because you have a foundation of a relationship and you can talk it through. So an example could be coaching someone through a mistake in a way that motivates them instead of discourages them or makes them scared or makes them want to hide their mistakes. So emotional intelligence, this is all part of our soft skills, right? So what are soft skills? I'd like it to just go on record that I don't love that they're called soft skills because there's nothing soft about them. Soft skills are things like communication, empathy, adaptability, motivation, accountability, having a positive attitude, being able to figure out and look at the bright side of something when things don't go the way we plan, right? That's all part of our soft skills. So soft skills they shape the way we show up. They shape how we interact and they shape how we influence people. Okay. So why does this matter in leadership? I want you to think about 2 different leaders. One notices that their team is under stress, but they push harder, okay? They ignore the signs of stress. They just focus on deadlines, okay? The other manager, they pause, they acknowledge the stress, and they might say something like, let's talk about maybe what our hurdles are, what might be getting in the way, and how we can support each other. Both leaders might meet the deadline, but only one is going to build a team that is engaged, that's resilient, and that's willing to go that extra mile. So I want you to think for yourself, which one of those managers do you wish that you had? So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about what is the number one challenge that you see with new managers in your organization. Maybe this is your current organization, ideally, or if you can't think of any problems, well, that's amazing. I want to talk to you because I want to hear what you're doing right. You could think about one in the past. So pop it into the chat. We're not going to address these at the moment, but we want you to pop them in the chat and really just get you thinking. So go ahead and do that. I'll carry on, but please feel free to drop these in the chat, and I will carry on with my next section. So research by Gallup. Gallup does tons and tons of research on culture, workplace culture, human interaction, all that kind of stuff. So Gallup tells us that employees who have managers with a high level of emotional intelligence are 4 times less likely to leave that organization than those who have managers with low emotional intelligence. I want you to think about that for a minute. Okay? 4 times. That's huge when we're talking about retention, right? This is what emotional intelligence looks like in practice. It is not a nice to have. It is not fluffy. It is not soft. It's practical, and it has real outcomes. So when leaders develop these skills, not only in themselves, but in everyone, trust goes up, collaboration improves, turnover goes down, and people feel inspired to do their best. And here's the really important part, okay? These skills do not happen by accident. They're learned, they're practiced. And when leaders and others commit to developing them, culture shifts. So the takeaway here is that soft skills and emotional intelligence are the difference between leaders who just manage and leaders who inspire. And when we have leaders who inspire, we have organizations that really thrive.
All right.
That's a lot of information that I've just kind of shared with you.
Lots of information, but very solid information. And I'm sure a lot of people will have questions. Thank you, Tammy. Like Tammy said, if you have questions, please go ahead and put the questions in the chat. We're going to come to that session where we, you can ask your questions. But Tammy, thank you for sharing that. And I know emotional intelligence is something very, before now, it used to be intelligent quotient, right? Somebody high IQ, you're going to be a winner, but I mean, emotional intelligence is more powerful. So I have 2 questions for you, actually. So my first question is, you've highlighted self-awareness and social awareness, right, as core to leadership. In your experience, what is the biggest blind spots managers have when it comes to emotional intelligence?
That's a really good question, because the thing about blind spots is if it's in your blind spot, we don't know that it's there, right? So I think probably one of the biggest blind spots I see is managers underestimating how much their own emotional tone sets the culture. So a manager might think that they're being neutral, or they might think that they're just focused on tasks, but their stress and their frustration, or even their silence, is constantly being read and felt by their team, right? So having self-awareness, this is recognizing how you feel, not only how you feel, but how those feelings show up in your behavior. Yeah, and that's what I do with my training. It's helping people get those things out of their blind spots.
That's interesting, and how it shows up, because sometimes we sometimes do not know that subconsciously the projections of our hearts and our minds is seen by people, and it shows up in subtle ways, right?
Absolutely. And we don't actually realize. That's what I'm talking about. Our face, all of our nonverbal cues, even the speed in which you speak or walk can send a message to people. Are you stressed? Are you approachable? Right?
Okay, that's interesting. So I want to ask a more practical question here. And you've given us the 4 dimensions. In practical terms, can you give an example of how EQ shows up in practical terms, such that a manager can pick that up today here and start using it or start implementing it?
Yeah. So one way that you can literally start today, this is how it could show up, is a very simple but powerful behavior, is practicing intentional check-ins, right? So not just about tasks, but focusing on people. So for example, instead of just jumping right into deadlines, and a leader with a high level of emotional intelligence, they might say, how are you doing today? How's your workload feeling? Like, how are you even feeling about this project, right? And then, and here's the tricky part, listen. Actually listen, right? Because what this does is this very small shift tells employees that they matter as a human being, not just as a producer. So when people feel seen and supported, they're far more engaged, they're far more loyal. And that's one thing that I do, right, is helping leaders, helping everybody tap into that empathy. Because yes, we want to feel empathy and have empathy because we want people to feel great about themselves and all the things. But let's be honest, the better people feel about themselves when they're around you, the more they want to do, right? So efficiencies go up. And right, impacts retention, impacts purpose, and just that overall culture.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So that means if you're a leader that you're always in your head, you can't be an effective manager. If you're always feeling everything, if you're always being emotional about how people react, what they say, what they did not say, how they performed yesterday, you will not be effective, because you will not be able to do that checking you said. You'll not be able to see how are you doing. You want to react, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So or the trick here is we want to stop being controlled by our emotions and our reactions. Yeah, and be more purposeful.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tammy. And I'm going to take you for that. I can take the floor, right, Tammy?
The floor is all yours.
Yes, and I'm sure you guys have questions. Please put your questions in the chats. We're going to go through the questions as much as possible, because one of the things that I find is that sometimes people do not remember what you say, or they do not remember what transpired, but they remember how you make them feel, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why high emotional intelligence is critical, because you're dealing with people. Anyway, my session is really looking into the strategic, into the systemic part of managing people. What we're really looking at is why managers fail, why managers succeed, what organizations that have managers and leaders who excel, what they do differently. And I'm going to be talking about why managers struggle. My first point here, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes here, is the first point is what we call technical promotion. Most people are promoted for their technical skills, not their leadership readiness. So the way I see it, and the way I've seen it over the years, is like a fantastic driver. Think about it. This driver is fantastic. He's a McLaren, is an F1 solid driver. He's so good on his job as a driver. Because he's so good and he's won different awards, all of a sudden, you tell him to start building a car. You see that? He has competencies and capabilities to do his job as an independent contributor for the most part. He excels, he shows up. But that does not equate the capacity to lead and manage people. Jack Welch said, I will pay anybody any amount in the world who can manage people. I'm sure you guys know that we human beings are complex. Managing people is not a joke. It's not about your eloquence and ability to speak English or abilities to turn in that report very well. No. So organizations, most times, they promote people for their technical prowess and competence, not their readiness. And that's a major issue. I see managers do it over and over again. Leaders do it, right? That's the number one reason. The second major reason is systems gap. So when you think about systems gap, it's the systems organizations have in place. HR systems that do not equip or reinforce leadership behavior. See, when it comes to organizational design, and organizational culture, for instance, that Tammy had mentioned. You see, organizational culture, for instance, is how we do things. And when I come to your house, there's a way you do things. In your house, in your space, there's a way you do things. When you want certain things to be the norm, you put systems and structures in place to ensure that that thing is sustainable. And within the organizations, there are critical systems that must be in place if you want managers to succeed. Because man, raised to power 1 billion, remains man. There are times he wants to act the way he wants to act. He wants to exhibit favoritism. He's biased. His bias will come forward. How do you manage it? He likes Bob. He doesn't like Claire. How do you ensure that is those favoritism or those bias or his own limitations does not come in the way of what you are building? You do that by putting in systems. Most organizations, they have systemic gaps. No solid onboarding process. No solid, clear performance structure, right? They don't have a way of measuring metrics that measures performance, that measures growth, that puts people in the right place, that enables them to develop. And that is a major issue, because without those systems, you will be running off emotions. You'll be running in circles. And we see that over and over when in organizations. And the third thing I see again and again is broken process. Organization, building a business, building an organization is very different from many other things, because lives are involved. But more importantly, you're building an enterprise. And for an enterprise to be sustainable, you need to have processes. If you have broken performance systems, you have weak onboarding, you don't have a looping system where, beyond evaluating or aggregating, you are able to assess people's readiness. You're able to reinforce the right approach, the right skill, the right competences. Your broken process would inevitably make your managers struggle. I've seen managers, one of my mentees would Hypo, wonderful lady, joined an organization, and in 2 months she was struggling, really struggling. And she was talking to me, and we were walking through it. I even personally was feeling frustrated because they didn't have systems in place. And guess what? They brought in maybe it was a consultant or an HR manager. I think it was an issue they recognized. And when the person came in, the person saw that they didn't have systems, put in systems in place. And by the time this person was going to go through a probation period, because of the systems that was in place, it was a 360 probation assessment process. Because of that system, she was able to put her objective, creative feedback on her experience, and immediately she put that into that system they had established. The leaders understood that this is not a one-side issue. They called the manager, they addressed the issue, and everything changed from there. Everything changed because of that system in place, because they're not driving things just by thoughts, by feelings, or emotion. So broken system is one of the reasons why managers struggle, right? And so let me quickly walk through what I call the systems, HR systems layer. You see, no matter how you feel, no matter how excellent you are, that's why I tell people what HR does is to ensure we have process, systems, and structures in place so that the organization will win in the marketplace. The sales guy, think about it. The audit dude, the guy in accounting, or the guy the medical guy, they are not printed. They are business focused. But without HR systems, your culture or your charisma will not help you scale. And so, what are the HR systems? I've mentioned just a few here. Number one is onboarding, right? Your 90 days system that shapes trust and loyalty. Onboarding is the new experience, is how your new talent experience your organization. Is what gives them the footing and the foundation. Can this place be trusted? Can I grow here? Right? Is there a looping system here? Am I being measured objectively here? Is there favoritism here? Is politics the main thing here, or performance? All of those are established from your whole body system. Then your performance management system, right? I've seen so many frustrating performance management systems because they're just ticking the box. You cannot grow, you cannot have solid management if your performance system is not effective and efficient, if it does not coach. Most performance appraisal systems, some of you will agree with me, is just to check who gets some promotion or who gets salary raise, right? Does not fully evaluate performance because there's no system around that. Then pay and progression. If you want your managers to succeed, there has to be transparency and fairness when it comes to pay and progress. How do I grow here? What do I need to do to move to the next level? If I am failing, how do I know? And how do I path myself back? You have to have that HR system that is solid, must be transparent, must be fair, and it must signal that our culture enables this, right? And that is important. The fourth critical HR system that must be in place is what I call manager enablement. Is that cadence? How many of us really always have that one-on-one with our managers, right? How many organizations have that cadence? How many organizations have that feedback system? Because most people just go, work, do it. It doesn't work that way. You're not dealing with machines. Even machines, you have to still service them. So I call it manager enablement. Solid organizations have that system in place. It's not just by how one manager feels. It's a cadence. I've worked with organizations that is established. I've installed that systems in the organization because, it's even up to what we call the step meeting, where you meet to the point of the CHRO. That can be once in a quarter. Organizations that have weekly cadence, monthly cadence, or bi-weekly cadence, where you do check-in, where you have skip level meetings, they are more solid organizations because conversations can be hard. It can be documented. That check-in can happen. And that place where you're struggling, can be highlighted. And I always say something. If somebody only knows they are not performing during their performance appraisal, then you are failing as a manager. If you terminate somebody and they only know that you terminated them because of performance at the point of termination, you're failing. You fail as a manager. That means you don't have that cadence that establish or that put things clear to people. And so systems are the silent storytellers of culture. They teach louder than any speech. Systems supersedes motivation. It supersedes performance. It supersedes everything. Systems is what keeps your engine rolling. And if you want to build a solid organization, you must have systems, tested systems that goes beyond your knowledge. And I find that organizations that succeed, they have that. Okay. So please drop this in the chat. If you've had to choose, what would you fix? What would fix leadership faster? Is it training soft skills or redesigning system? If you have to choose out of the two, what do you think will fix it faster? And if you think both is needed coherently, please drop it in the chat, right? Just think about it because you're here for a reason. And one of the reasons why is you want things to get better. So if you have to make that choice, because some organizations will make that choice. Somebody says systems. Okay. All right. Okay. So I talked about cadence. Yeah, I'm seeing this. This is lovely. I talked about cadence. Right? And that leadership cadence and business case. Because one of the critical things we want to do here is to give you something so tangible you can walk away with. And that is this cadence I've taken my time to explain, and I'm re-emphasizing it. If you don't have that leadership cadence where you are checking in weekly on your people, if you don't have that leadership cadence where you are sitting in to look at the data on the monthly basis, what are our customers saying? What are people reviews saying? And I'm emphasizing this because, see, if you're an HR person here, you know that HR is not all about HR. HR is about the business. And so if you're an HR person here, it is your duty and responsibility to establish that cadence. If you're an HR manager and HR leader here, you must know how the business is doing. You must go to the field sometimes to see how the people are doing. It's that cadence. Right? You can't be always just on your seats turning out policies or documents. There has to be a checking cadence where that loop is established. And research on employee engagement says when people, the AL model says when they talk, they stay and they thrive. But as an organization, we structure that conversation so that it becomes a healthy conversation and usable conversation. There are conversations in the grapevine that you use, but more importantly, you guide that conversation by putting the right systems in place. Turnover is very expensive. Attrition is expensive. Replacing a great talent is super expensive. So what is your responsibility as a leader? You must be able to, in those cadence, reframe conversations. In those cadence, that's where some of the competencies and skills Tony is talking about comes to fore. You are able to ask clarifying questions. You are able to seek to understand, not just to want to speak. You listen, not to speak. You listen to understand. You're able to know what the issue is and go back and build a cadence that works. And for some people, you're able to also understand that you don't always have to have all the answers. I've worked with some fantastic managers. And one of the things I coach my managers that I see the excel most, they don't post to have all the answers. In fact, one of my directors will always say that, I mean, I don't have all the answers. That's why I'm working with you. And she will come up and put our own weakness. She'll very constructive. She'll put it out there and she uses it to build trust because she listens to people. And this is sustained. See the difference. This is sustained by the cadence. If you have a manager or you're a manager or you see your manager, they're always missing all this cadence because some of organizations have it in place, there's a problem. And sometimes it's avoidance. And you might not see the immediate impact, but it's a trickling impact. And that's one of the things we do when we put in systems in place for you as an organization, right? Because without this cadence, without these systems, the struggle is going to be powerful. But more importantly, it's not that it's powerful. More importantly, you begin to lose money, right? Every organization is in to make money and make the people's life better. So without those systems, you lose trust, you lose money, and you lose business. That's terrible. And I put here as a round of my own little charts that what you measure and repeat becomes what people believe matter. And that talks about measuring things. And you can't measure if you don't have cadence. You can't measure if you don't collect data. You can't measure if you don't interpret the data well. You can't measure if you don't apply the data well, right? And you need a system to put that in place. You need a system to ensure all of that in place. And so that is my own big idea to help you understand how to build systems that guarantees a sustainable, thriving, progressive organization, a learning organization, a growing organization, and a transformational organization. Thank you.
Oh, I love all that. As you were explaining all of this, Emily, I'm just imagining the various places that I've either been an employee or I've worked with. And when there's systems in place, when there isn't systems in place, it's very noticeable because it reinforces that culture, right? And so thank you so much for all that. I do have a couple of questions. So you talked about how many managers are promoted for technical skills rather than their leadership readiness. Now, from your HR perspective, what is the single most important signal that an organization should look for before giving someone that leadership title?
I wish I can tell you that there has to be one signal, right? I wish I can tell you there's just one thing. It is a compendium of many things, right? What is the most important signal? It's your ability to, so the best way is for the organization to have a readiness framework. Do you understand? Have putting a system in place to assess readiness framework. And there are different systems. For instance, the 9-box metric. Some of us know the 9-box model. That is one of the systems organization put in place. Now, there are newly developed, metrics and ways that organization, putting in place or puts in place. But for me, before you bring in somebody, before you say they are ready, you have to have clear indicators. Have they been trained? Have they exhibited behaviors that aligns with the organizational culture? Have they showed competencies that is critical for the growth of the organization? Then have they showed that they have the managerial capacity? Like I said, being an independent contributor, being good on your job is awesome, right? But have they showed that they have the skills to coach? Because a manager is a coach. Yes. A manager is not just an instructor, a director, he's a coach. So there's so many things you have to check in place. Is the willingness and the passion there, right? Are they teachable themselves? Have they invested themselves in learning? Then do you have a very well structured development system? Are you a learning organization? But do you have a cadence where you develop your people and put certain people through and put your people through there and you see them excel very well? So I'm sorry, I can't tell you it's just one thing, but the signals are many. Readiness is important. Competency is important. Empathy is important. Ability to handle conversations firmly, ability to manage tension without contention, say no without breaking relationship, ability to have difficult conversation, Those are important. More importantly, emotional intelligence. You must not put somebody on board who is not self-aware, who is not situationally aware, who is not socially intelligent. They will mess things up for you, right?
Absolutely.
I hope I answered your question. I said many things, but all of those cadence must be in place.
For sure. No, that's all excellent information. And these are the types of things that we want to be looking for in all of our employees. And one of the things I talk about with organizations is really talking with everybody in the organization about showing leadership qualities, whether or not they have a leadership title, because everybody can be an informal leader. And, you know, that goes to developing people before they're even actually in that leadership title or having that formal leadership role. So that makes perfect sense what you've said. So I have another question. I'm thinking about size of companies. So you've definitely shown us how culture really scales through system and cadence, right? Yeah. So for leaders who don't have big HR teams or even an HR team, like where should they first start if they want to see quick impact? Is it with onboarding, performance, pay, cadence? Like where do they even start?
That's a good question. That I'll tell you straight is onboarding. Right? Start with onboarding. If you can build a solid onboarding process and system, you make less errors. What is the cadence for the first 1 week? What are the critical things they are to learn? How do we communicate our values to the people? How do we want things to do? In your onboarding, you unpack all of that in it and you build structure around it. Right? So if you want a solid system, a new manager or a small organization, please don't overemphasize or don't overlook the onboarding process. Take your time to develop a solid onboarding because it is how the person shows up, what the person sees that they run with, right? And you see, human beings are always asking, how do you want me to see you? Right? How do you want me to treat our clients? How do you want me to treat these performance appraisal systems? How do you want me to respond to my colleague when they do things like this? Don't leave it to assumption.
Of course.
Editing your onboarding, and it's going to be solid.
Right, because we're teaching people what the expectations are here. We can't assume that people know, and it's way easier to talk about these things before they've become a problem, right? We want to set people up for success right from the get.
That's the word. We want to set people up for success. And that's a critical question you must ask. Beyond the service or the product, you must be able to come out of it and say, the people that make this happen, how am I setting them for success? And don't say, oh, well, I gave her a raise last week and she said, thank you. No. That's not it. What repeatable systems do you have in place? What training do you have in place? What process do you have in place that when we remove you, if you are removed, it keeps going or it keeps replicating itself? That is important.
Right. And saying, well, I gave them the policy manual on day one that's 400 pages thick. No, that is not setting them up for success.
That was what I spoke to a client last week. Their policy manual is so big. I said, tell me, you yourself, did you read all this? Did you go through all this? So how do we gamify it? How do we, distill it into creative ways where people can understand it and they know why? Right? We're not doing policy as for policing. We're also not even disciplining people. Let me just talk about that quickly. You're not disciplining people. You're not a cop. It's corrective action. And the corrective action is not to destroy, it's to put them in paths, on the right path. And if they refuse to go on the right path, that corrective action corrects them out of the organization. But you have to have a system for that. Your performance appraisal or your PIP is not to determine if not to make sure that your termination stick. It's to grow them, and that system must be in place. Because these are some things people do, and they say, but we do it, but they're not doing it as effective as possible for the original intention of it, and that obviously always leads to issues.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish this webinar was 3 hours long because I think we could talk about this for a long, long time.
Oh, yes.
This is just dipping our toe in. So put your questions. We want to hear from you. Can we put some questions in the chat? I see that there are a couple in there. Let's maybe start. I see. So please feel free to go ahead and do that. I'm going to read one out, Emily, and perhaps you want to answer it and then I can add or just kind of flow.
Go ahead and
Okay. So one here says, how would you recommend implementing this or fixing the current issues without your team feeling that you are just being retroactive and that you're actually being genuine about how you want to change or improve as a leader. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the answer is in that question itself as well, right? So it's one of the things we must understand is the time is now. And when it is now, it means now. If the time we want to start improving things, then it is now. The critical thing is, how do you go about it? You have to be genuine. And being genuine means you're taking responsibility. Being genuine is being open to the people and say, we recognize that we have dropped the ball, or we have not done this, or this has been an issue. Be very open and transparent about it. It doesn't make you less. And say, but going forward, we call it estopel in the world of in the labor relations world, right? We are putting you on notice. This is how we want to begin to do things, and this is. And some of us, another critical thing is, number one is take responsibility, right? Be human about it. There's no Superman anywhere. There's no perfection everywhere. We're just striving. And this is time we want to improve the systems. We recognize the bottlenecks, we recognize the challenges, and we want to take it a step at a time. Then be clear about what that process looks like. Don't allow too much uncertainty in people, right? Projects manage it, no matter how small it is. You don't need to go and bring a project manager or a change manager, but be clear of that process. Identify the risk, identify the pain points, identify the why, identify the stakeholders, and then implement it gradually, right?
Yes.
The openness, that would always work.
Yeah, I love that, gradually, right? And I think that, you mentioned it earlier, and I love it, is that leaders don't have to know all the answers. And in fact, my favorite, the leader that I look up to the most that I've had in the past, was very quick to say, I screwed up, or I dropped the ball on that, or let's figure this out together, right? There's just, when somebody shows that they're a human being, relationship builds so much. And so just to add on to everything that you've said for this particular question, is that I love being able to talk with people about your team, say, don't come from a place of blame or that we need fixing, or right, that it's just, here's where we are. How can we get even better? Here's what I'm going to commit to for me. Here's what I'm working on, right? Because people don't like to be told that, like, hey, we suck. Let's try to not suck, right? It's here's what we do good. How can we do even better?
Yeah, that's important. This is something I talk about with leaders a lot of times when we're doing the reorg, and it's called the power of framing. Right, it's a skill that needs to be learned, and I know in part of Tammy's training, that's a critical part. There are neuro-linguistic language that you have to use to help people journey and untangle whatever web they're going through. And it starts by empathy, and knowing that, hey, we're on a journey together, and that's important. So I think we should take 2 more questions, because we have just about 7 more minutes, and we want to get to time. Okay. All right, so let me take that one. So this one says, as an intending business owner, how do I plan build a system for my new enterprise? That is a big question. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. We might not be able to unpack that right now, but I think the critical thing is start with a clear vision of the kind of organization you want to build, right? And I will encourage you, don't think small, think big. There are solid organizations. Whatever you're thinking in your head, somebody has done it, and they are thriving, excelling at it out there. So start with that clear picture of that organization, and go and look for what are the levers that make all those the organization great, and work back from there. Systems, process, mindsets, like a learning organization. There's what we call learning organization. There's so many things that, but the critical thing starts with the clear picture of the kind of organization you want to build. Once you have that vision, you write it down. You know that if you want a 10-story skyscraper, then you must be ready to put in the work and strategy of a 10 that can sustain a 10-story skyscraper. And this, you're not compromising anything, and you're making the right investments. I hope I answered that. But you can book a session with us. Once you want to start, that is something where we thrive significantly, and we can help you out on. Tim, you want to take the other question?
Yeah, so there's one, it's just a real quick question. How do you draw a balance between discipline and empathy? That's a great question, and a lot of leaders struggle with that. And my take on that is, we always want to provide people with choice. Human beings need choice. So the way I look at it is, I'm always going to show my empathy, but when we have our culture, this is what the expectations are in order to be one of us. And it is your choice as an employee to either walk the walk or not to, right? And so it's not me punishing you, but rather I'm giving you some choices for, do you want to be here or not? And you allow the person to walk through whichever door, and you support them if they're going to stay, and you support them if they're going to leave. Because the reality is that sometimes it is best for the person to leave, right?
Yeah.
The best for the company and or the best for the individual. So you can always have empathy no matter what's happening.
Beautiful. I wish there was time. I would have really gone deeper into that. But Tammy, you hit it, and you must be clear of what that choice looks like. So another question here says, okay, hi, Molly and Tammy. Thank you so much. How can you systematically reorientate a high-performing manager who seems closed off to self-awareness despite consistently delivering results, and who resists change even after extensive training, mentorship, and growth opportunity? You have answered the question. In fact, I always tell leaders, never train somebody who's not willing. It's a waste of investment.
Yeah.
In fact, when you're doing your training assessment, one of those aspects in your gap analysis is the readiness and willingness. Of course, motivation has to be there, intrinsic and extrinsic. You must be able to clarify, but don't waste your money training people who are not ready. Now, I understand they're high performers. So the critical thing is this: if you have made investments in mentorship, in training, and in all of those things, did you have a clear-cut outcome in mind when you were doing it? Was it clear to them, the expectations? If you've set all of those parameters, it was clear to them, and they are not meeting this thing, then you need to begin to think differently. See, it's not, the fact that you've invested in all of that means that they are contributing to your business. But when you begin to tolerate people like that, you're telling every other person is okay, and you're destroying your culture, right? So you must be able to make substantive, definite decision. And it's good you started with investment. But if they are not making adjustments, don't say change. People don't change. People adjust. You influence people. If they're making the right adjustment that our organization sets as a path, then it's time for them to part with us, like Tammy has said. After doing all to stand, you stand, you don't sit down, right? That's the principle. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean, let's maybe take one more question. And because we have to officially close this, we want to keep to our time. And then we will go, we will probably just do what we'll do. Tell me what you want to do.
Yeah, you know what, I think before I do that, I just want to point out, if people are asking, because there's a couple questions in there, this leadership toolkit, I just want to speak about that for a quick moment, because we can still answer your questions after the fact. Okay. Yes. Like you're going to have our information. Please, the conversation does not end right now. Okay. But so we're providing you with this toolkit. It's a role charter toolkit. Essentially, this toolkit provides clarity on purpose, responsibilities, and expectations so that employees can align their work with organizational goals and to be accountable for results. So we're going to be dropping a link in the chat here that's also going to be emailed out to you. Please click on it, get access to this. Here's the deal. Imole and I, we each have our own, our own business. We each do our own work. We recognize the power, and we saw it in the chat about what's going to impact our culture and our organization the most. Is it systems? Is it training? And the real answer is it's both. Right? So we recognize the value of the two of us together. It's a two-pronged approach, right? You can't just slap in some training without systems and expect things to change. You can't all of a sudden say, hey, here's the systems, follow it, without training people how to do this, right? So that's what we're most excited about being able to support you with. And we want to be respectful of your time right now. So we committed to an hour. That said, you have our contact information. Okay.
Yes.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Good. Yes. And we want to say a very big thank you. I know a lot of people who just showed up from their break time, their lunch time. We really appreciate that you're here. Our contact is here. Somebody said, how do you learn from both of us? Well, both of us, we try as much as possible to share on LinkedIn. You know, we're also going to be sending you emails after now. Those of you who want the recording, we're going to send it to you. But officially, we have ended the session. We want to say thank you so much. Like I said, officially, the session has ended. You know, we appreciate you for coming. You know, we really, Tammy and I were glad that you came.